Hi, this is Andrew Markus. This is Film Music Mentor. Today's topic, the top 4 music mistakes to avoid during production. Top 4 music mistakes to avoid during production. So the first, number one, beware of unexpected music in your environment. So let's say you're shooting in a cafe, and there's music playing from the radio. Well, you could have a huge problem later if that music is on your dialogue track, and it's in the booms, the lavs, and the camera mics, and you can't get it out. So two things can happen. Maybe you can try to edit it out in post, but that could be expensive, and it could make your dialogue sound a little aquatic or tinny or like it's underwater. And you don't want to have to scrap the interview. So if you notice that there's music playing from a source, see if you can get the manager in the cafe to turn the radio off for a few minutes. Another situation, you are doing something on the street, and I live in New York, so there's filming constantly, and there's noise and music everywhere constantly. So let's say you are in a spot, somebody's playing music. Let's say it's just a singer-songwriter. Well, you can get a release from them and say, hey, look, we're doing this film. Your music's in the background. Could we have this release in your permission? We'll give you credit. And, if they say no, or, maybe you can ask them to stop for a while. The danger is when the music from the outside source is very popular, high demand, and impossible to license. It could be a real problem. You might have to shoot over. You may have to trash your whole scene. But if you had to shoot over, it's probably better to do that before the edit than once your picture's edited and it's in this whole post situation where someone's working on sound design. You have an editor who thinks they're finished, but we have this issue, can stall your release date. It can cost you money, and just your post people having to do extra work. It might take someone time to try to find the music, to license it. And if it's music that you don't know what it is, it could really, really, really be a hassle. So beware of unexpected music in your environment. If you hear it, see what you could do to stop it from getting onto your soundtrack. It's possible it's not going through the lavs, and maybe your audio mixer on set could say, "Hey, I'm not hearing it. It's not getting picked up." But it could be a huge problem that you want to avoid. Number two, this is kind of easy, but I've seen this in a couple of situations actually, where a character is really into a particular band or artist, and that artist's music is sort of integral to the story. And it could be a little awkward if, let's say, for example, your main character is obsessed with, I don't know, Frank Sinatra, and he is humming and singing and never sings a Frank Sinatra song because you have to edit it out. Um, Anything that Frank Sinatra performed would be probably hard to get the licensing to. But sometimes it's done on bigger films and it's an integral part. I'm thinking of two films off the top of my head. There was a movie called I Love You Man with Jason Segel and um, and Paul Rudd. Great movie. And the two characters, one of the things they bond over is their love of the band Rush. And they jam and play Rush songs. And there's even a scene where they're at a Rush concert and Rush is performing. So in that situation, clearly that was worked out ahead of time, and Rush seemed to be, was into it and they were part of it. So don't assume that if your character has some kind of obsession with a big act, um, like the Rolling Stones or the Beatles, that don't worry, we'll license it later, we'll take care of it later. Someone's going to love this film and they'll invest the millions of dollars in the music licensing that we want. Don't do that. Have that done ahead of time because it could cost you your film. It could ruin your film, ruin your chances of festival admissions and distribution in general. It could kill an otherwise wonderful project. I don't think this is something that happens all the time, but it does happen, and I've seen it. Number three, people dancing, dancing in a scene. So sometimes there's people dancing in a scene and they film it and there's actually no music. And then music has to be found later on that they could potentially be dancing to. That's not really that big of a problem. What's a problem is if you have a piece of music that's, again, really popular and it slips into that dialogue track and you can't get rid of it, you'll have to do ADR or you have to license the song, and that both of those things are not ideal. So one option is have the song that you're going to be dancing to picked out ahead of time. Probably most people won't do that, but that's one thing. Another thing is if you have something that they're dancing to just so they're in sync and it doesn't get on the dialogue track, keep track of what that is, because then your sound mixer or your music editor, music supervisor, composer, editor even, they can find out what the tempo of that music is and make sure that the replacement track is the same tempo so it looks like everyone's dancing in sync. And not awkwardly. So that's a minor thing. But again, if that difficult to license music is on the dialogue track, it could cause you trouble. You might have to scrap the scene. You might have to shoot it over. All of those things, especially a scene that might have a lot of people in a club, that's tough. So try to avoid that and prepare ahead of time. Number 4, if there's live music in your production, let's say you're doing a film, you're filming at a jazz club, just a scene, and there's an act going on. You got to make sure that you can get the rights to that music, or especially if it's being recorded on the track that your dialogue is on, it's very hard to strip that. So you're either going to have to go back and do ADR, which you don't want to do that if you don't have to, and it becomes a post-production hardship, maybe not nightmare, but it's definitely a hardship. So if there's live music going around, try to get releases, try to figure out what they're playing. If they're playing really popular stuff, it could be very difficult to get the rights, and you could have a problem. And you don't want to have that problem when a distributor brings it up. And you don't want to have that problem as you're about to get into Sundance and they say, do you have your music clearances in place? Because you won't. So it's really good to plan these things ahead of time before the shoot. If you're hiring actors to play musicians and they're just kind of faking it, it's a good thing to let a composer know or someone involved, so that, let's just say for argument's sake, you got an odd group of musicians, and the music that they're supposed to be playing has to be composed, has to be created. This could be a very difficult situation. I did a film where this group was playing in a bar, and it was a really unusual combination of like a couple bongo drums, a guitar, and a guy playing a recorder. And so I had to write a song that fit on screen to what was going on and synced with the mouth movements, and create this out of nothing. It was really difficult. It was a lot of days' work. And that's okay. I had a blast doing it, but it's something that it could cause a problem. So anything that's musical, that's going to happen in the frame, on camera, it's really important to get that worked out ahead of time. I know I said that 50 times in this one little clip, but it's really true, and I can't say it enough, and I hope it's something that's helpful to you. And the 4 things you want to keep out for: 1, unexpected music that it shows up in the environment. 2, do your characters have any, let's say, creative fetishes regarding particular artists? 3, dancing. How are you going to handle dancing? The music in a scene with dancing. And lastly, when you have source music or music that's happening live in the situation that you're recording or filming, that could be an issue. So you always want to prepare for that ahead of time and avoid what could be, at best, a lot of work, at worst, legal ramifications that stall your film, make them go over budget. You should really plan ahead of time. All right, this is Film Music Mentor. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time.